Welcome to the Western Community Global Opportunities presented by the WIU chapter of the Phi Beta Delta International Honor Society. Phi Beta Delta is an organization dedicated to recognizing and encouraging achievements in the field of international education. The purpose of this program is to promote international understanding by giving students, staff, faculty, and community members who are involved in internationally focused endeavors an opportunity to share their knowledge and experience.
Hello, and welcome to this session of Western Community Global Opportunity. I'm Patty Jones, a member of the community and the retired director of WESL, Western's English as a Second Language program. I'm interviewing Angie Veith today, and Angie is the Assistant Director of International Admissions and the DSO, that's immigration speak, for Designated School Officer for Immigration Concerns on the campus of WIU. We're going to be discussing some of the rules, the regulations, and the misperceptions about international students and their status in the United States. So Angie, welcome, and I'm going to start with a question that I think is a misperception. Many people think it's easy to come to the U.S. to study. Can you share with our audience what the process is like for a student and how long it takes?
Absolutely. I worked in the School of Graduate Studies for about 13 years, and while I worked there, I was an admissions officer there, and so I worked with domestic students, and I've also now worked with international students for the past almost 6 years. The process itself is very similar. However, the time that it takes is a great difference. You still have to send in the application, an application fee, and then all the necessary documents. For some international students, it can take a little bit longer, of course, to get your transcripts from an international school and get them to the United States. And then once the admission decision is made, we have to send immigration paperwork back to the student, and then they have to go through the process to obtain their visa, which in some countries you can get an appointment in as little as 2 weeks. Other countries it might take 3 or 4 months to get an appointment. And then you have to go to the appointment and find out whether or not you've been approved for a visa. If you're not approved, then you have to go back and maybe try a second time. Students also have to provide financial documentation to show that they can support themselves while they're here in the United States. And for most of our students, they have to show about $25,000. And I don't know about you, but $25,000 is a lot of money. Yeah. And so they have to show financial documentation that they have that money readily available. For some students, that can take a little while for them to get that available. They may have to apply for loans and wait for that process. So there's a lot of things that can go into making this a very, very time-consuming process for students. So most international students, if they want to come to the U.S. to study, they have to plan in advance for at least 6 months to a year ahead of time to know that that's what they want to do and that's where they want to go.
Are there some countries that have the students have more opportunity to come than from other countries?
Absolutely. As you know, there are lots of different relationships between the United States and other countries, and in those countries that we have a very positive relationship, it's pretty easy, I mean, in my estimation, for students to be able to come here. For those countries that we have maybe a more difficult political relationship, it can be extremely difficult, and sometimes the students, through no fault of their own, just cannot come here, which it's heartbreaking to me, because I know many of them want to come here very, very badly to study, and then, like I said, through no fault of their own, they're not able to do that, and it's very heartbreaking to have to communicate with that student and then find out that their dreams are gone.
Well, I think a lot of times Americans just think, oh, I apply, I show up, and that's it.
Right.
And there's so much more to it, as you pointed out to us. Now, from your experience, do most students stay in the United States after they've studied?
It depends. There are some students, one of the programs for those students who come on an F1 student visa, which is our most common visa here at Western, those students have an opportunity to stay in the United States for an additional year after their program has ended, and they can apply for what's called for optional practical training, or OPT, and that's where they get to work for a U.S. company to help them gain experience in their chosen field. So for example, a computer science student would work in the computer science industry and learn how this is how American companies do our business, this is how our business day works. what our policies and procedures are, and then they can take that experience back to their country and maybe show their companies, okay, this is what I learned in the United States, this is how things are done, and maybe they can adopt those, or maybe they can make some changes or improvements to their own system. Those students who are in a STEM program, which is science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, have the option to apply for an additional 2 years of optional practical training. So they could potentially stay here for an additional 3 years beyond their degree to gain some job experience to take back with them to their home countries. Not only does it help them show this is how American companies are doing business, but it also gives them something to put on their resume to hopefully help them get a good job when they get back to their country, because that's what we want them to do once they've obtained all this education, is for them to get a good job and to be happy.
What kind of practical training would a STEM student be doing from your experience?
They would still be working in a field related to their, in a job related to their field of study. So back to my computer science person, they may be working, doing Java programming, all kinds of computer programming that I know nothing about.
You and me both.
So it has to be in a job related to their field of study. So for instance, they can't just go out and let's say get a job at McDonald's or Walmart or something like that. It has to be in their field of study so that they're gaining practical training, because that's part of the title.
And as you pointed out, it's a limited time period. They're not allowed to work indefinitely.
Exactly.
This is
exactly.
just for the training itself.
Exactly.
One of the things that oftentimes is, I think, overlooked with our international students is the kinds of contributions that they make to our community, to the United States, to our state. What can you share with our audience what some of those things might be that we may not be thinking about?
One of the things I love about working in international admissions and with international students is the opportunities I have to learn about other countries, to learn about other customs, other cultures. We have students from over 50 countries at this school, and I would love to visit every student's country to see what it's like. I'm not going to get that opportunity, so I can travel through their eyes. They can tell me about their countries. Some of the things I've learned have been a little surprising. Other things have it's like, okay, yeah. The main thing that I have learned, and I tell people, is no matter what your religious background might be, no matter what your customs or cultures might be, basically, at the root of it, we're all the same. We all want to be happy in our lives. We all want to have a good job that makes us happy, and we all want to achieve our dreams, no matter where you're from.
One of the things I know, we're both members of NAFSA, that's the Association of International Educators, is that each year they put out the information about the financial contributions of international students. Could you share just in general a little bit of that with our audience?
Oh, students, because you have to consider, not only are these students bringing tuition money to WIU, they're also spending money here in the Macomb community. They're going, to Walmart, to the grocery store, to gas stations, getting their hair cut. They are making a contribution financially to the United States, because they can't just come here and not eat or anything like that.
Right.
So they also have to buy services. So if we didn't have, we currently have 459 students. So imagine 459 people that are no longer contributing to the financial infrastructure of Macomb and WIU.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a significant impact.
Well, and you mentioned that each student has to have approximately $25,000,
Right.
and so that's a basis of a living expense as well as the institutional expenses that we have. So that goes into the mix of other contributions, right?
Exactly.
Cool. At WIU, we mainly welcome F1 and J1 students and scholars. Could you share with me what the differences are in these categories?
Well, as far as from a student perspective, the F1 and the J1s are pretty similar. There are a few minor different rules that they have to follow, but overall they're essentially the same. F1s can only come as students to study. In the J category, there are several different categories. They can come as students as well. They can also come as a visiting scholar. So if someone from another country, they're working as a professor at, let's say, I know we have several visiting scholars from Costa Rica working with the biology program. So they're working at their school in Costa Rica, and they want to come to the United States and pair up with a biology professor here at Western to conduct certain research. So they can come in here and work with our researchers in the biology program or any program and conduct that research, and then take that back to their country and utilize that information to further their other research there. And the J program has been implemented as a cultural exchange. So not only do we want to teach these scholars and visitors about American culture, we also want to offer them the opportunity to teach us about their culture. So we try to provide opportunities for them to maybe give a guest lecture so that they can talk about different things from their country that might be of interest to our students, faculty, and staff. There's also, in addition to the scholar, we could have a visiting professor who might want to come and teach for a semester or two to our students in certain areas, wherever their interest might lie.
Are there American professors here at WIU that have been a part of this exchange as well?
Absolutely, yeah. It is a cultural exchange, so yeah, we do encourage not only the professors to come here and work with us, but also professors to go overseas to other countries. I know we've had some who have gone to China to conduct research there and to teach courses and whatnot, so it goes both ways.
So it's a good opportunity for us to learn and for them to learn both ways.
Absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
Now, how does the university and the government keep track of students after they arrive?
Well, once students arrive in the U.S., they all have to check in with me, whether they're J visitor on the J visitor visa or the F1 student visa. They all have to check in with me as the university's immigration advisor. I have a program that I use from Homeland Security called SEVIS, which is the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, and I am charged with keeping that updated on each student. I have to tell them where they're living. Once they're on the optional practical training that we spoke of earlier, I have to tell them where are they working. So there are ways that Homeland Security keeps track of students, and it's my responsibility to make sure that that is kept up to date.
And that's why you're the DSO, is that correct?
Right.
That might be something you could share. DSO being designated school officer, but designated for what?
All kinds of information.
And being in charge of it.
Yes.
What happens if somebody's not in status or not doing something? What happens to the situation then?
Well, if something happens, like we've had students who unfortunately have had to withdraw from classes, as happens, whether due to maybe a medical condition of a family member at home or their own medical condition or something like that. When that happens, then I advise them on what the immigration rules are. And they may have to go home. They may have a certain period of time, such as 15 days, in which they have to exit the country and go home. So it's my job to be aware of those rules and regulations and to make sure that our students are following them. They can always come back. We can always do the paperwork to let them come back, of course. Depending on why they had to exit the United States, if it's an authorized early withdrawal, then that's seen as what they consider a positive termination. So if they go for another visa, then the consulate official would review that and see that, okay, that was okay that they left due to that reason. If the student chooses to make some poor decisions and maybe not follow the rules, then they can be, I will have to terminate their status due to what's called negative reasons, which would be maybe expulsion or unauthorized withdrawal, where they just stop going to classes and they don't enroll in classes the next term. Those are negative marks against the record. So if they do return home and then try to obtain another visa, they may not be able to get one because they haven't followed the rules. So
this all goes into the SEVIS report, and that's a worldwide connection.
Yes.
So it's not like nobody will ever know what happened when I've been at Western.
No. Yeah, the consulate officials at all the U.S. embassies have access to view that student's record. Also, when they enter the airports, at the port of entry, the customs officials there can also review certain parts of their records to make the determination whether or not to allow them in the country. Because just because you have a visa that says you can enter the country, the customs official at the port of entry in the airport actually makes the determination. And if they find something that kind of makes them think, no, maybe this person shouldn't be allowed in the country, they can turn them away at the port of entry and send them back home and not allow them into the country.
So anything that's suspicious, and they can be sent home without ever getting to the school or any place else.
Exactly.
Wow. I'm sure many people don't realize that. Okay, one final question for you. What interactions do you specifically have with the students?
Well, I talk with students about a lot of different things. It can be, a lot of them may have immigration questions that they come to me with, and I'm telling you, each student has their own unique situation. And this job is not one that you can sit down and say, okay, you're going to do A, B, C, and D, and that's all you're ever going to have to do, because each student has their own situation.
No one size fits all.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes when I think, okay, I've got a handle on this, somebody comes out of left field and it's like, hey, what about this situation? I'm like, I'm going to have to research that and get back to you.
Never heard this one before.
I spend a lot of time researching stuff for students to find out what are the regulations and rules concerning their situation. Also, I tell students at orientation that I'm kind of like their mom. I have to make them follow rules, certain rules, and just like when their mom says you have to clean your room, sometimes I have to tell them these are the rules that you have to follow, and I'm sorry, but you can't do what you wanted to do because these are the rules, and you have to follow them. So I help them with a lot of things. I've had them come to me with even personal issues to help them with, and I've guided some students to university counseling because it's beyond my scope of duties and beyond my capabilities. So it's all kinds of things, and that's what I want to be for the students, is one of the people that they can come to at the university for help, because they're in a foreign country, they're all by themselves, they may not have family or friends here, and they need someone to help them through, whatever situation they may be facing, and that's what I try to do for the students.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you, Angie. I know that there are lots of things that you're involved in, and we appreciate you being here today. And I'm sure that our viewers have learned a lot about the governance that covers our international students. So thank you again, and we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Western Community Global Opportunities, presented by the WIU chapter of the Phi Beta Delta International Honor Society. For information on how you can contribute to upcoming episodes of this program, please contact the Center for International Studies at 298-2485.